Hello, everybody. This is Darren Bates with UFFS Podcast number 16. And of course, we have again joining us Larry Fisher, as always. I wanted to say Fish and Bates, but my family told me that they really don't like it, Fish. So I'm just going to stay away from that. Darren Bates, Larry Fisher, but I can still call you Fish, right?
Absolutely. Good to be back. As you can see, I got a different background tonight. First Battle of Alberta of the season. The NHL season underway tonight. And as you can see, it's pretty clear what side of the Battle of Alberta I grew up on anyway. I haven't bought a jersey in probably 13 years or 10 years anyway. These are older jerseys, but nonetheless, you can see what side of the Battle of Alberta I grew up on and where my allegiances still lie. Even being an unbiased media member, it's hard not to be an Oilers fan at heart when you were raised that way. So we have a new backdrop and fitting that it's debuted, revealed on the night of the first Battle of Alberta this season.
I like it. I like the new setup. And of course, Battle of Alberta or not, sort of marbles in my mouth here tonight. I knew that you'd have the Oilers up there all season long anyways. So obviously today's agenda is going to be a busy show, mostly focused on the UFAHL. Special guest today, handpicked to align with that subject, actually. And we're going to learn about him as well coming up. The UFHL leaderboard and interesting tidbits that have happened in the last couple or 3 weeks. Interesting news in the world of hockey. There's always something going on. And obviously, we always end with important dates. And there's always some very important things that people need to be aware of in the UFFS. So with that, Fish, I'm very happy to announce our special guest here. We have Brent Baldwin joining us. No relation to Alec, he says. How are you doing, Brent?
No relation. Good, doing good, guys. Good to be here.
Man, if I could draw on that family and that money, then I would surely be putting a bid in on the expansion franchise in the UFHL. Maybe you need to. There probably is. If you really go into the genealogy and trace the family history, there might be something there you can use.
Go way back. Yeah, way back.
So very happy to have you. It's exciting to have you on the show. Big resume in the UFFS in a short amount of time for you, my friend. Previously, the general manager with the UFHL North Stars and the UFAHL Glacier Cats. Now, assistant general manager for the Royals and general manager for the affiliate UFAHL the Noblemen. And I'm not going to say last but not least, or more importantly, but I think what I'm pretty excited about, and I thank you very much for being the co-commissioner for the UFAHL, our newly launched league, along with Curtis Johnson. So pretty impressive already in a short amount of time there, Brent.
Yeah, a lot has happened really quick. It's been enlightening and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's been. I would say that it has been a busy last couple of months for you would be a little bit of an understatement.
A little bit, yeah. Just going from franchise to franchise and then trying to get the UFAHL off the ground. Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, I guess you could say.
A lot of work for you, a lot of work for Curtis, a lot of work for the Fish. But, we're going to get into all things UFAHL and AHL here in just a minute. But first, kind of more interested in learning, about Brent and what makes you so special. So you've been involved in covering in the American Hockey League for a really long time. That's my understanding.
Yeah, probably this is, well, I did 6 years in the ECHL with Wheeling, and now I've bounced around with a couple different teams. But yeah, I've been in the AHL now for probably, I think this is, I don't know, 12, 13 years. So 7 years between Lehigh Valley and Wilkes-Barre Scranton. So yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
Absolutely. So what drew you to get into that side of hockey, into that side of professional sports?
It was kind of an accident. I had a friend that had a blog, and it was a bare bones blog, and he got the idea that since I was living down in Allentown, and Pittsburgh's, it was a Penguins blog, and Pittsburgh's ECHL affiliate would come to Reading. He said, "What if I tried to get you a credential?" And I had never done anything on that scale. The first game I did, I was scared to death because I had interviewed, high school athletes and stuff before, but going and interviewing guys to get paid to play, that's a totally different totally different arenas. So yeah, I was scared the first game, but it took probably 4 or 5 games, and it was like nothing else. The guys in the locker room, for the most part, didn't they were real good to me, actually. So I've had some bumps and issues here and there over the years, but nothing major. It's actually been a lot smoother than I ever expected when I started.
Well, I think that you and Fish could probably share a lot of common experiences in that realm, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, yep, definitely.
Fish, have you ever covered any American Hockey League games?
I've covered a lot of prospects from afar, and then obviously all the junior hockey I've covered for the last 15, 20 years. That's a stepping stone for all your WHL graduates, alums. They mostly, other than the real high-end first-round picks, make a stop in the American Hockey League, in the AHL, and that is their stepping stone to the NHL. So even when I was on the California road trip with the Oilers through San Jose, the San Jose Barracuda plays out of the same rink as the San Jose Sharks, and it was convenient that Rourke Chartier, one of the better Kelowna Rockets alums, was playing with the San Jose Barracuda at the time. So went and watched their practice and interviewed Rourke Chartier and former Sharks great Mike Ricci, known as much for his hair and his nose as his talent on the ice. But yeah, so I've certainly followed a lot of the WHL alums through the AHL, and I have been to a couple AHL games over the years. Certainly when the lockout was in, I was actually playing junior B at the time in Pinoka, Alberta, but Edmonton had the Roadrunners just for the one season with Jarrett Stoll and Rafi Torres, and those guys were based in Edmonton just the one season. And I had my uncle had season tickets there, so I was up to most of the Roadrunners games when the AHL would come through Edmonton. So yeah, over the last 15 years or so, pretty familiar with the AHL, but mostly through phone interviews of covering WHL prospects that are developing in the AHL on their way to the NHL.
Yeah, there's a lot of linkages there. So Brent, let's go back to your resume that I spoke of. This is all UFA or UFHL. You, as I said, were previously general manager for the North Stars, and we did have Cam on our show before, so I'm very familiar, and we talked about you at that time. I think congratulated the fact that you were becoming their GM. So you've moved on. So tell me about that.
That was a thing where I'll call it philosophical differences. It got to the point where I told Cam that I didn't want anything to affect our friendship, and this hasn't. My moving in with Arnie and Taryn and the Royals. My thing when I started this was I told him if it wasn't going well, then I didn't want it. Like I said, I didn't want anything to affect our friendship. So I was going to do anything I had to protect that, and that was definitely part of making the move.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and I hear you. It's almost like getting into a business partnership with a best friend, isn't it? And this is fantasy hockey, so there's going to be a lot of passions that run pretty high in this thing. So yeah, that's an interesting move. So tell me about Arnie. He's an interesting character. How's that relationship going so far?
Arnie, it's fun. He and I would talk when I was working with Cam. We would just talk about players and different aspects of the sport, and we always seem to be on the same page in terms of our thinking. So it's made transition-wise, it's made it seamless. It's kind of like working with Cam. Like I don't know Arnie personally, but I've gotten to know him a bit, and he's a great mind, and it's like I think you mentioned it to Cam in the beginning. I said you need smart hockey people, and Arnie definitely fits that bill.
Nice. I think he's probably going to be pushing for some management meetings down around where you live. And forgive me, Brent, I don't even know where you're based.
Atlanta.
Yep. Yeah. Arnie's been showing some temperatures of where he's from up here in Canada recently, and it's around about, as you would call, I think, negative. You guys in the U.S. usually say negative. We say minus, but negative 40 some degrees. So, yeah.
I couldn't do it. Atlanta. I could not. I mean, here today, I think it was 44 degrees. So compared to up there, yeah, it's toasty down here.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did you first learn of Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports?
Cam started the North Stars, and he goes, "Look, I need some help," and that was basically it. I had never heard of it. So Cam and I started working together, and it became a lot bigger than I ever envisioned, because my deal with fantasy sports was, especially in hockey, was mostly just running sim teams in sim leagues, which you use I think it was East Side Hockey Manager, and simulate everything through. There's trades and everything, but it's nothing like what we have here.
Yeah, no, this is well, it's pretty elite, as we say. So what, any big aha moments or key learnings that you've learned so far in I want to say a brief period, and maybe it's been 5-6 months, maybe longer, in the UFHL?
Yeah, I went and made a trade. I had been pretty good about, if I saw something I liked, I ran it through Cam. And one night at like 2 a.m, Tyrion and I were going through prospects, and there was a guy I wanted that I was kind of enamored with. And like 2 a.m, I just didn't tell anybody, and I just pulled this trade. And I don't remember who I got, but I traded Chandler Stevenson. And boy, was Cam upset. And I can't say I blame him. And to that point, I never did anything again without asking. And I told Arnie the same thing. I said, he goes, "You have full control." And I said, "No." I said, I'm not gonna make a move without making sure you're good with it first, because I know what can happen.
Interesting. Yeah, it's I guess it's important to always check with the boss. I think I
Absolutely.
can totally understand. And I do have a fondness in my heart for Cam, as he was our first guest on our podcast that we had there, Fish, if you remember that.
Yeah, Cam was great. And like I said, friendship and fantasy hockey, sometimes they work great together. And sometimes, philosophical differences is a real thing in the real world in hockey, as well as in fantasy hockey. And one thing we've seen with the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League is, normal or regular beer league fantasy hockey leagues with your buddies, you're all running your own team. But what we've seen in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League, groups of 3, groups of 4, groups of 5, we're starting to mirror the real world, as far as having assistant general managers that only focus on contracts and the salary cap, and another assistant general manager that focuses primarily on trades, one that does the day-to-day lineups, one that focuses on scouting. So you have a staff, and I think what Brent was getting at is kind of the too many cooks in the kitchen type thing as well, where there are several different people influencing every decision, and it clashes come in if the duties aren't delegated really specifically. If everybody has a say in trades, very few times you're going to get 4 or 5 people that all agree on a trade. And certainly there is that hierarchy as well between the franchise owner and Cameron, as well as, the assistant general managers and the GM. So everybody's learning as we go. And those dynamics are, again, when it's high stakes, right? Chandler Stevenson just happens to be centering Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty in Vegas this year. And maybe he's worth more now than he would be as his own player, right? Because Chandler Stevenson wasn't a standout junior player, not even necessarily a standout AHL player. But when you're with those line mates in the NHL, your value goes up. And certainly that's probably what Cam's seen when he woke up, was we traded, arguably Vegas's first line center for a prospect or two. So you can see it from both sides. But again, time will tell on the prospect Brent targeted in that deal, and whether he plays for the North Stars and potentially helps them in the rebuilding process, because the North Stars are one of the franchises that are on their way up the standings in the future and rebuilding in the present. Whereas now Brent's working for the Royals, who are a top 10 franchise, and obviously franchise player Alex Ovechkin getting later in his career. So that their window to win is right now, and they want to finish as high in the standings as they can. But Brent's role there as the UFAHL Nobleman general manager is still to keep that pipeline coming, keep that feeder system coming for the Royals. So if they get in a cap crunch, Brent has a player he can promote to the Royals from the Noblemen, and they can keep going and keep that roster firing in all cylinders year to year.
Yeah, it's going to be key to have the guy with the AHL knowledge for sure on your side. I can see that. So obviously, and Brent, you would know this, that the vision of the founders in the UFFS are to get into many sports, not only hockey. But has it always been hockey for you, or have you been involved in other sports?
Fantasy wise, last year I won an NBA league in Yahoo, which that was an accident because I somehow wound up with James Harden, LeBron James, and Steph Curry on the same team. So yeah, that was totally an accident. So that was cool. I'd never won any Yahoo League for anything, not baseball. And I know I've got a pretty deep background in just about every major sport and some auto racing. So the basketball thing was cool. But yeah, there's hockey is my bread and butter, but I know a lot about a lot. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think based in Atlanta, obviously hockey, you have a lot of opportunities for different sports down there. That's
Yeah.
basketball would be huge. Absolutely
Yep.
would. Football, NASCAR, probably. I think you mentioned NASCAR to me once.
Yep. NASCAR, IndyCar. There's not much auto racing I don't watch. If it's got four wheels and goes fast, I'll pretty much watch it.
I like that. So, you know what? Whenever we have a guest on here, there's always, and of course, we want to delve into the AHL and the UFAHL big time here today. But there's always one question that we ask every guest on the podcast. Fish.
Yeah, no, we always ask Brent if you could have dinner with one sports figure, alive or not alive, past, present, who would it be and why?
If I had to think off the cuff here, probably Pete Rose, because I would want to ask him, the betting thing. I know he admitted to it some years ago, finally, after, denying it for however long it had been, 30 years or whatever. Why do that? Because he basically threw his career away. And I had to do a paper on him in high school. And, looking at betting slips that he had written out, all this other stuff that I had found, he was betting on them to win. So I didn't understand, what in the process of being a manager and affecting outcomes of games, I didn't get what he was gaining other than money out of doing that. And obviously it's had a pretty big impact on him because it's keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. So, that's something in his career that he just threw away. And I think I'd have to ask him, why. Obviously, he was hung up on money, but there had to be something else there to throw away your entire career. It didn't make any sense to me then, and it certainly still doesn't make any sense to me now.
Yeah, that would be quite the conversation. Just hearing his self-reflection too, right? All these years later, like I said, keeping him out of Cooperstown and not being in the Hall of Fame, just to hear his hindsight, in hindsight, what he would have done differently or why at that time, again, a younger guy at that time, but what was going through his head and what was the motivating factors besides potentially just the money. So sports betting and potential, illegal gambling amongst players and officials and everything else. It's been a story in several sports over the years, and probably a lot goes undetected. I'm sure he's not one of the only ones that has made that mistake, or he's the one that got caught, and it's the public face of it. Him and the NBA referee, I want to say Tim Donaghy is his name, or
Yep.
Tim Donaghy.
Tim Donaghy, yep.
Yeah, there's not a lot of them that have got caught. Probably some more have got away with it, but certainly it would be a very riveting conversation to walk him back in time, and then hear that reflection on what he's learned since, and how badly he does want to be in Cooperstown and in the MLB Hall of Fame or Baseball Hall of Fame.
It's funny. I was in Vegas some years ago, and he was signing autographs at a sports memorabilia store in the Bellagio, I think it was. And I was going to go in there and try to talk to him and get an autograph, and then it was $400 just to talk to him. So yeah, that obviously didn't happen because at that time I didn't have $400 to literally just set on fire, because that's pretty much what it would have been. But it's something that I think he kind of shaped, especially baseball. He shaped the history of the game. And I think if you look at what he did just on the field, based on that alone, take the betting part out of it, he absolutely should be in the Hall, because look at all the records he set. I think he won 3 or 4 World Series, 3 in a row. The one at one point was Cincinnati. So he absolutely should be there. It just, he threw it all away.
Thanks for sharing that story, Brent. I think that's an amazing example of somebody who you really want to sit down with, not because necessarily you idolize them, but you want to know the story behind. And if you know the old classic saying, if you could turn back time, what would you do? And I think that story you brought up about him signing autographs, it's amazing how life's path take you maybe past somebody that maybe you should have met many years ago. But I was going to say that was my own experience. I was in Vegas a number of years ago and I saw him signing autographs outside
Yeah,
probably the same place. And it was probably the
yeah.
same time. Maybe you and I were there and we didn't know each other at that point, but I had my family with me. We were on vacation, my kids, and they were younger at the time. And I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know if I should be excited to see him or if I felt a little bit dirty to see. It was a confusing situation for me.
It was, for me, it was just kind of sad because, obviously something had happened in his life that he felt the need, and it may have just been ego, but he feels the need to sit in there every day during the week and wait for somebody to come pay for an autograph. And it was kind of surreal, but it was also, there was a sad element to it because he just shouldn't be in that situation.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I felt. And there was not a lineup either. So I did feel a little bad, actually. Maybe I was just there at the wrong time. But yeah, no, that's a cool story. So let's get into the AHL. So I'm going to flat out admit, and this is why we have a guy like you on a show like this and have you as co-commissioner of the UFAHL, our newly launched league. Just did the draft here a couple of weekends ago. I know you guys were very instrumental in that, you, Fish, and Curtis. The 85th season, the AHL has been going on a long time. 85th season, going to have a short season just like everything else. I think opened on February 5th. This is probably going to be one of the toughest seasons in recent memory. I mean, 85 years is a long time. Things have happened. But is this one of the toughest?
It is, because it's not even a season. You've had multiple teams that have just said they're using it strictly for development. Not even all the teams this year in the Eastern Conference are playing the same number of games. Syracuse is playing 24 and has said that they don't have any interest in participating in a playoff. Wilkes-Barre is playing 32. And that's why the league said, okay, they weren't going to award the Calder Cup. I think the way I understand it, all they're going to do is at the end of the 32 or whatever games, they're going to have a short playoff for the top 3 teams in each division so that somebody can say they won a division. There's not going to be any trophy handed. It's, as a guy in the media, I kind of got to watch what I say, but I'll say this. If you're just using this for strictly development, there's no reason that these guys can't just be practicing out of NHL teams' facilities. It's just, they're already having issues with delaying games because of what's going on in the world. It just seems foolish to me to try to even have a season in a situation like this. And I know a lot of it was pressured by the NHL clubs that wanted guys ready to be called up, but because of differences in testing, it's not easy to move a guy, say, from Wilkes-Barre to Pittsburgh. And the days of calling a guy up when, the NHL club is on the road and you've got to try to get a guy from, say, so I'll just make an example here, Wilkes-Barre to St. Louis, those days are gone. And I think that's why they have the taxi squads. But even that's not a perfect situation because some of those guys only have 4 guys. Some of those taxi squads only have 4 guys. And what are you doing when 4 guys can practice by themselves? What are you getting out of that? There's a lot going on. And I just think it's foolish to try to have a season in a situation like what the world is facing right now.
Yeah, that's a really good feedback. What are your thoughts, Fish?
Yeah, I think Brent hit a lot of the nails on the head there. I mean, obviously 3 franchises opted out of the season. So 3 of the AHL teams aren't even playing this year. Just their NHL affiliates and also their local situations with COVID and stuff. It just didn't make sense to play. So 3 franchises pulled out altogether. So those players had to find alternate places to play and sharing farm teams, sharing AHL franchises. So they're running short there at 28 instead of 31. And you look north of the border, the Canadian division, all Canadian division in the AHL as well. The schedule is not even out yet. Teams are, Calgary's trying to move their farm team up from Stockton, California. You got, Toronto with the Marlies and Ottawa with Belleville. There's a lot of uncertainty with Ontario restrictions, if and when those two Ontario-based teams will get going. So as of now, the AHL season started last night on Friday. There is and it was exciting. I looked through all the game sheets. I watched most of the highlights, and I really related it back to the UFAHL. Hey, whose players got off to a good start, games earlier today. It is cool to watch and follow, and I'm glad the AHL's back. I'm enjoying the aspect of being a fan of the AHL and seeing these players that are developing and how they've improved from where they left off last year or in junior. So the fan in me is happy that the league's playing, but like Brent said, just the uncertainty of all the teams playing a different number of games, the Canadian division not even starting, 3 franchises not going. The logistics were overwhelming to run an actual AHL fantasy league for 2021, but knock on wood, we're hoping that things are back to normal for the first official UFAHL season in 21-22, hopefully starting in October. If the stars align in the real world, then that'll be the plan in the UFAHL and the ultimate franchise fantasy sports world.
Absolutely. So we did a UFAHL draft, as you guys would have seen or been a part of, and we did it in the very same manner we did with the UFHL, of course, about a year ago. But what is interesting is to my knowledge, this is the first time there's ever been a minor league fantasy league, and also a leasing system that goes along with. So congratulations, Brent. You're a part of history, my friend.
That's really cool. It's a lot to take in. And Larry will tell you this. I can't tell you how many times I said to him, we'd be talking about something at 1:30 in the morning, trying to figure out, different aspects and this and that. I said, boy, did we pick the worst time to try to get this off the ground, because there was so much. And I got to throw this in there before I forget. I want to thank Curtis, because if Curtis didn't jump in the way he had, I don't know that Larry and I would have figured it all out, because there was just the scope of what we were trying to do was just incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of thoughts that have to go into doing something and putting something together that's never ever been done before, and that's part of the magic. But there's a lot of hours that go into this kind of thing for sure. So, what do you think of the leasing system? It's very new. It's innovative. It should complement in the fantasy part of it. I think it brings a whole new dynamic to it. What are your thoughts on that?
It does, because there's nothing, and Larry and I were talking about that too one night real late. There's nothing in the AHL in real life that simulate or even comes close to being close to that, because it's like I was telling him, you don't see very many AHL to AHL trades. Most everything you see is, like, for instance, last year, Wilkes-Barre had a guy, I want to say Stefan Nason. The guy came out and in like 10 games had 18 or 19 points. And Pittsburgh got into a situation where they were shorthanded at forward. So they signed him to an NHL contract. Mike Vellucci had coached him in junior and brought him in just on an AHL deal. So Pittsburgh signed him, and then it was really weird, because they put him back on waivers and to try to send him back to Wilkes-Barre, and San Jose claimed him. So yeah, as far as the leasing goes, there's nothing in the real world that kind of, ties in with that. So it's been a learning experience for me, and I'm sure same thing for everybody else.
Yeah, I think the cool thing with the leasing is it keeps all the players on the platform, certainly the AHL level players. They're all playing, and whoever owns that player stands to profit from. So a lot of the top end AHL players were already owned by scouts prior to the UFAHL draft. And it allows those scouts that, while they're holding that asset, they're leasing them for the gameplay in the UFAHL to whoever takes on that lease, first come, first serve. And those franchises, when they get their payout, their prize money from the UFAHL, a portion of that prize money will go back to the scout that owns the player. So rather than having the scouts own 2,000 players that are doing nothing and just sitting in their pocket, those players are playing in different leagues that mirror the real world, and the profits from that league are being distributed back. Essentially, the players are earning their salary at the end of the season as part of the payout, going back to the scout that owns the player. So the players, as we get the KHL and the junior leagues and the NCAA and all the other European pro leagues going, there will always be a place for these players to play on the platform. Ultimately, their goal is to make it to the UFHL, to the NHL. But along the way, you're not going to have a zero negative value or a zero value asset just sitting there, burning a hole in your UFFS wallet, because wherever that player is playing in the real world, we plan to offer that league on our platform, starting with the UFAHL. So all these AHL player prospects have value right now for the scout that owns them, even if they don't make the NHL and they're quote unquote a bust. If they stay at the AHL level, they're still going to be returning profits to the scout. So it adds a whole nother element with the leasing system to ensure that every player has immediate value once they're owned by a scout or certainly drafted by a franchise. And now with Brent overseeing the noblemen for the Royals, his goal is to, much like the real world, because these are true farm teams and they're intertwined, his goal is to make some AHL trades at the AHL level, or get Arnie to acquire some prospects that'll come down. The Royals will acquire them, but they'll come down and play for the noblemen. And Brent's goal is to get that feeder system going. So he's got young, cheap, entry-level contract guys ready to promote to the Royals when they inevitably get in a cap crunch. Because I think, again, this is only the first full season of the UFHL, and we're going to see the salary cap really pinch a lot of UFHL franchises, much like it does the NHL in the real world. And what those franchises need is their farm teams, their UFAHL affiliates, to be able to say, yeah, you can walk away from that guy in free agency, free up a couple $1 million in cap space, and here's my player who's ready to step into the NHL, or currently, a bubble player for the NHL, that a tweener that's going to come in and chip in some fantasy points and help the Royals when they get in a cap crunch. So it'll be really exciting to watch that true farm team system work, and see guys like Brent, who know the AHL extremely well, work their magic at that level as a feeder system up and get that pipeline going for their UFHL franchise exactly the same way it works in the real world.
It's guys like you, Brent, that make these things happen. And we need these people that know these leagues and how they run and how they function. Obviously, it's going to be an interesting year. Me, personally, I'm going to miss the Manitoba Moose, because those are the types of games where I live that you can take a whole family to, a whole hockey team to, for nice, reasonably priced entertainment. And I love to go to those games. So it's too bad, but it is what it is. We're going to make the most of it. And I think, as Fish pointed out, and you pointed out, Brent, that it's important to get this thing off the ground in the UFFS. We have to work the kinks out of it. We got to get this going. We got to get players registered on the platform. But at the end of the day, there was no point in running this thing officially and have a whole lot of money involved and a trophy and everything. There could be a full cancellation. So I'm happy to watch this thing develop. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's definitely been interesting to try to get off the ground. And the other way to look at it, and I was thinking about it while Larry was talking there, maybe this is the best time to do it, just because, you don't have the intricacies of a full season going on. So maybe in that regard, we caught a bit of a break.
I think so. Just as far as figuring out the gameplay as well and tweaking the gameplay, I think that it was a good season to have a trial season, because if it was an official AHL season full length, everybody would have wanted that prize money. They would have wanted that trophy. I think everybody's understanding that this is a beta testing season, and we're just, like I said, working out the kinks. But the main thing we wanted was the digital asset ownership. 648 new players that were previously unowned were drafted by the 31 UFAHL franchises in the UFAHL draft last weekend. So all of a sudden we have 648 more digital assets owned by those franchises. And it's going to be riveting to watch how many of those 648 work their way up to the UFHL in the years to come. And it'll be the exact same as the real world as far as seeing those players graduate. And we have a system in place where they are sold to their parent club, promoted through a sale to the UFHL. They can also be auctioned. If your UFHL team is full and one of your AHL guys are lighting it up, you can auction that player at the discretion of your UFH. If Arnie says, you know what, Brent, you got a guy who's a stud, we don't have room for him right now, but let's auction him to the rest of the league as a revenue generator, you can do that as well. We saw it with the Truculent Owls put Andreas Borgman up for auction. Didn't get any bites, but that's the thinking there, that if somebody likes Andreas Borgman, hey, you get a little bit of kickback right off the start. And again, it was pretty relatively cheap to buy a UFAHL franchise to get in the game. And now you have your 26 plus players, 26 to 40 players knocking on the door of the UFHL, and to see how many of those players graduate in the years to come, to how many you can promote to the UFHL, I think is going to be super exciting and super realistic as far as how it works in the real world with AHL players. Like I said, I've covered junior hockey for 15 years. There might be a dozen players that have went straight to the NHL, but the vast majority, even a guy like Leon Draisaitl, the reigning National Hockey League MVP, Hart Trophy winner, he spent almost a full season, or combined full season, parts of 2 seasons playing for Bakersfield in the AHL just a few years ago. So almost everybody does some time in the AHL, and they will in the UFAHL as well on their way to the big clubs. So it'll be awesome to follow and to see those players graduate on our platform and mature and grow and be promoted the exact same way they are in the real world.
Okay, Brent, I have one more question for you, and this is an important one, so listen very closely, because I don't know what happened with your negotiations in becoming assistant general manager for the Royals and officially the general manager for the Noblemen. So if you do well, and I don't know what the metrics are to track this, have they promised you a knighthood? Will we have to refer to you as Sir Brent?
No, but I should go back and rework my contract to make sure that that's included, because that would be awesome.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe you should throw that in there and find a way to get that done. That should be part of the package. Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Okay, guys. Well, I'm so looking forward to this UFAHL. So happy to get things off the ground. A lot of work put in. Thanks again, Brent. But we can also accept your input on the UFHL, and things are happening. There's obviously some COVID interruptions there, which I think the NHL is trying to deal with, and we've put policies in place at UFFS to handle things that could come up as well. But what I always like to do every podcast is kind of run through the standings, and we have a new leader as of this podcast, guys. And I actually brought some things along to help celebrate. I think you know who it is, Fish.
Yeah, no, it's exciting times for the Red Army franchise and Luc Grenier, who certainly went all out for this season. And you can see Darren can take it away, but Darren's he's got his Red Army outfit cheerleading. He's ready to cheer on the Red Army and celebrate them being at the top of the standings.
So what I'm going to do is I don't know if you guys know this song, but when I think of Russia or Putin, I think of this song. Have you heard this song before?
Rasputin.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me think of Russia. I don't know why it is. So that's why I'm going to play this song. And I'm going to pour a little bit of Luke's Silent Partners drink into this cup, my UFHL cup, and I'm going to take a sip.
Nicely done. For me, cheers, Darren.
Let's cheers to Luc Grenier and the Red Army, and cheers to you, Brent, and cheers to you, Fish. Oh.
And for me, it's too early here in BC still to pop the top off, but much like the Red Army, I spared no expense, and only the finest will do. So I got a couple bottles of Grey Goose for the occasion, but I'll save them for a little later this evening. But much like Red Army, spare no expense in celebrating their first time on top of the standings, their first week leading the UFHL.
They are, and so number 2 is the Titans, number 3 Ice Vikings, number 4 are the Yetis, and number 5 is the Outlaws. Nothing really has changed in the top 5 over, really since we kind of got this league off the ground for the most part this season. But Red Army is really starting to pull ahead. In fact, if you look in the Gretzky division, he's 126 points ahead of the second in line, which are the Grizzlies. So he's kind of running away in that division.
Well, I mean, if you look at his roster, I mean, he kind of should be. Barring, I mean, the only thing that's going to stop him is, a few of those first round picks, the real good players, the Lafrenières, and a couple of the other guys he got. I think if they get hurt, for an extended period, then he might run into a little bit of trouble. But I mean, he's got Carter Hart on the back end. Hard to find a better goalie than him right now. So, I think barring something unforeseen, it's his to lose.
I like your feedback, and I like the way you think. I totally agree with you. So I'd have a question for both of you, actually, Brent, and also for Fish. So the top five, they've been pretty much the top five for quite some time here as they exist right now. What do you think in particular separates these top five? And I should say this is as of this recording. There's a few games on tap in the NHL over the next couple of days, and I don't see it changing necessarily. But what are the chances they'll stay in the top five or top 10 throughout the rest of this UFHL season?
I think Luke is safe. I think if he were to fall to 10th, I think that would be a massive shock. It really would. He's so. I laugh about it because I envy you, Luke. Seriously, that was what you did in the draft was just incredible. I laugh about it, but man, that team is just so loaded. So loaded, and it's not even that they're loaded for now. You look at some of the guys they got in the later part of the first round. Askarov, guys like that aren't necessarily going to be. They're loaded for the next 5, 6, 7 years. The way I look at it.
Well, you know what, Brent? If I watch some of the chats and Luke's interaction, he just says he's just a regular guy. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, right. I don't think anybody believes that.
Yeah, he was 19th in the power rankings as of December 1st.
Yeah,
My one friend.
I don't know how that happened. I don't know how that happened either.
Yeah, somebody must have been lowballing him there, but I think it's become a running joke that Red Army was projected 19th, but certainly Brent's right. Luke's invested the most in his franchise. I mean, several $1,000s he's put into constructing his roster, more so than some of the other franchises, even amongst the other top 10 teams. So he's invested significantly in the UFFS platform, and certainly he's been very aggressive, very proactive in his investment of turning Red Army into an immediate contender. But like Brent said, that team is built to win for at least that 3 to 5 year window because of all the talent he was able to grab in the first round of the draft from the 2020 draft class that are going to be cheap contracts for 3 years entry level and some of them more. So he's going to have to stick handle the salary cap. He acquired Mikko Rantanen as his recent biggest ringer, and that put him to a cap team. So now he's kind of got to do money in, money out moves as far as stick handling around the salary cap. He's got some tougher decisions now on the expansion draft. Come July, he's got between now and July, he's got to make some difficult decisions on who he wants to move out and who he can protect. But certainly the core group of that team, the young guns, are there for the long haul, and Red Army might actually get better in these next few seasons than they are right now. So as of now, Red Army is the team to beat. And then, like Darren said, you look, the rest of the top five, I think, are all relatively deep teams, and they're all sort of in that position for different reasons. You look at the Titans. They made the big move to acquire Mark Scheifele from the Battlehawks, Winnipeg Jets star. They brought in Mark Scheifele, and then they got David Pastrnak back from injury. So those two, Scheifele and Pastrnak, have really bolstered the Titans lineup. You look at Ice Vikings, what they did is they built the perfect team for the scoring system. They have so many guys that are multi-stat guys that shoot, that hit, that get penalty minutes. They hit all the categories with guys like Brady Tkachuk and Evander Kane, and they have some star players too, including their goaltender John Gibson. But the big thing with the Ice Vikings is they drafted their roster and acquired the players that fit perfect for this scoring system to maximize each player's potential. And then I think the Yetis are one of those teams that are very top heavy. They have Connor McDavid, they have Artemi Panarin, they have Mitch Marner, guys that are, basically three players take up, half their salary cap space, but they are star players, and they've been living up to their potential, living up to the hype this season. So they maybe don't have as much depth as a team like the Outlaws, who are almost the exact opposite of the Yetis, where the Outlaws have not as many big names, but they're just an extremely deep, well-balanced team. The Outlaws are, where every player contributes every night, you can say, whereas the Yetis are really led by their big guns. So there's some differences in the way those teams are constructed, but certainly Red Army's the front runner, and those other four are going to be hard to catch in that top 5. They're going to be contenders for the entire season by the looks of it, especially with a shortened season. The season's almost a quarter over already, as somebody pointed out today. We're basically a quarter of the way into the season, so you got to start making moves now if you want to take a run at that top 5. And we seen last night the Battlehawks pulled the trigger. As we mentioned, they traded away Mark Scheifele, and now they've landed Steven Stamkos as sort of the salary in, salary out, another big franchise guy. So they have Steven Stamkos and John Tavares, 2 first overall picks, leading the way for the Battlehawks, as well as landing a guy like Kevin Hayes. So they've made some significant strides in the standings under new general manager Alex LeBlanc as well. So stick tap to Alex to shaking things up with the Battlehawks, but being able to replace Mark Scheifele with Steven Stamkos.
Yes, Alex LeBlanc has been a very busy man, a big blockbuster trade. I follow the Battlehawks on Twitter, and he's active there too. So I've been doing a lot of liking of his trades lately, it seems. So, okay, I'll place my money on those top 5 remaining in the top 5. One thing I noticed is that all the top 5 are in the top 10 in goaltending as well in fantasy points, except the Outlaws. They're actually kind of way down the list at number 20.
Yeah, that's interesting. Goaltending, it's funny because some people commented on the scoring system that goaltenders weren't valued high enough. I think that perception has changed. If you look at the nightly stats of the goaltenders, more often than not, the strong goaltending performance of the night is right up there with the strong players. So I think the goaltenders are valued quite evenly and realistically, more so than people thought in the chats in the early weeks of the season, that maybe goaltenders should be valued higher. I think they do have a lot of value, and I think we're seeing that, and that's why we're seeing some of the teams that are banking those goaltending points. You mentioned a team like the Titans have Andrei Vasilevsky, and a team like the Ice Vikings have John Gibson. So they have some of the premier starting goaltenders, and those goaltending points are adding up for sure to keep them right there at the top of the league.
What's next for the Royals there, Brent?
It's funny, you know, Larry mentions the goaltending, because when I started with the Royals, first thing Arnie asked me was, where do you see the holes in the lineup? And I hadn't had a chance to look at the roster. So he and I are talking, and I'm going through, and oh, there's Jake Evans. Oh, there's Alex Ovechkin. And then I get to the goaltending, and I'm like, okay, we've got Jake Allen, and we've got some other random backup. And I'm thinking, well, we had 2 backups on the North Stars. Part of that was, I take full responsibility for that. I'll say this. I wanted, we got Vitek Vanacek from Easton's. We bought him, and I wanted to keep him. And this was before Henrik Lundqvist had his health issues. So I wanted Vanacek. Cam wanted Delia. Ultimately, I deferred to Cam. Well, I think Cam would tell you that, boy, that was a mistake, because Delia, when he plays, isn't playing well, and Vanacek is now getting all the minutes for Washington. So that was an error. But it's like I told Arnie, I said, the one hole you have is the goaltending. So he went out and got Mikko Koskinen, and that's worked pretty well for us so far. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, because Mike Smith is eventually going to get healthy. So that might eat into Koskinen's playing time, but it's better than having 2 backups. I can tell you that.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with Mikko Koskinen, like I said, we'll see how he fares tonight in that Battle of Alberta, and how that plays out. And Mike Smith could be back next week, but he is so far he's logged the most minutes in the NHL, and he's a goalie that is going every night as of now for Edmonton. So that's you need those games played. You need the opportunity to get points for sure. And I think you guys do have a hot shot prospect there in Ilya Sorokin. I think he's getting a little bit of time with the Islanders, but he could be the future goaltender for the Islanders. So I think he'll be good in the years to come. And you mentioned Vanacek being an under the radar guy. This is where Brent's AHL knowledge comes in. Brent's seen him backstop the Hershey Bears. He knows how good he is. Vitek Vanacek, the average fan probably never heard of, if they don't follow the AHL, never heard of Vitek Vanacek prior to this season. He was the NHL Rookie of the Month for January. He had an awesome record, awesome stats for Washington. And actually, it was funny because I thought personally, I was like, oh, well, Kirill Kaprizov of the Red Army, Minnesota Wild, Russian star, new Russian star in the league. I thought he's the slam dunk Rookie of the Month. And then when they popped up Vitek Vanacek as the Rookie of the Month, I was a bit surprised until you look at that stat line and realize how important he's been to to Washington, especially with Ilya Samsonov on the COVID list and out. Vitek Vanasek would have been a nice guy to build around for the North Stars. And if I'm not mistaken, Brent, I think you guys had Kevin Lankinen as well with the North Stars and moved him out as another emerging stud prospect. He went to Strong Island, who just called him up today, but he's been one of the real emerging goaltenders this season as well. So you could have had a Vanasek Lankinen tandem there potentially with the North Stars.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. As far as Cam and that is concerned, Casey DeSmith, when he's played, has been, for the most part, very good. Now, Pittsburgh's defense is a mess, so that, doesn't help him any. But yeah, we could have had, and actually, it's funny, I actually went and tried to acquire Lankinen back from Terry to get him on the Royals before we got Koskinen. So that didn't work out. Terry didn't want to move him, and I can't say I blame him, because I wouldn't have either, knowing the way he's playing right now. So, yeah, Koskinen's worked out, and it should continue, because Mike Smith has struggled for the last little while. So as long as Koskinen keeps playing well, shouldn't hurt us too much.
Yeah, but I think it's great to see how you're able to identify those AHL talents, including Casey DeSmith. You know the AHL as well as anybody on our platform. So for you to be able to identify those talents and target them and help grow the AHL side, and certainly for the franchise you're working for, that bodes well, because I don't think too many people certainly involved in our platform follow the AHL as closely as you do, especially being a credentialed writer for the AHL. So I think you're going to come up with a lot of steals in the years to come and the months to come by following the AHL as closely as you do.
I actually can't take any credit for finding Lankinen. That was Cam. Cam found him. I was not familiar with him when we got him. When Cam brought him up, I did some digging on Elite Prospects for a couple hours, looking at different things and different pages and this and that. So should we have kept him? Probably. I don't remember what we got for him, but it's all going to work out. I'll tell you, the one thing that bit me when I was working with Cam, and I think Cam would be the first one to admit this, we went out and acquired Corey Crawford, and literally the next day he retired. And we were in a mess there for a while, and I think that's why we're stuck with Delia, and that's why they're stuck with Delia and DeSmith. And I mismanaged that. I will be the first one to say that. I that's something I regret. I wish we had kept on Vanacek, because Cam would be in a little bit better spot now than he would be if we had kept him. So.
But yeah,
that's my fault.
Couldn't have foreseen Corey Crawford retiring. Nobody's seen that one coming. And those are the curveballs you get as a fantasy GM, because you're not privy to what's going on behind the scenes in the NHL with a guy like Corey Crawford, who would have been New Jersey's starting goaltender, and that would have been a quality guy to at least for the short term to keep your goaltending in good shape there.
And you know what?
It was funny. It was funny when he retired. I messaged Cam on Telegram, and I said, well, Crawford just retired. And his reply was, well, at least we got a first round pick. And I started laughing, because that was the only good part of that deal, was the fact that we got a first round pick out of it. So, what are you going to do? You can't control guys deciding when they're done. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I was just pointing out the fact that when you get those curveballs, that's when these kind of things come in handy, probably, and you just sit back and look for the positives, right? You always look for the positives. You got that right. I think, obviously glad to have you and your experience in the AHL, and we'll certainly be having a lot more eyes on us with the launch of the UFAHL, and we'll get through this year as best we can. In lieu of time, we're probably not going to get too much into the NHL news as we spoke about already as the time of this recording. The Battle of Alberta, which I'm very excited to take to see what's going to happen with Fish's Oilers here tonight after we're done this podcast. But I do want to talk about the fact that even though right now the UFFS is only in hockey, but we're on the eve of the Super Bowl here. So I just want to get both of your predictions on what you think is going to happen in tomorrow's game. Fish.
Tampa. Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Go ahead, Brent.
Tampa, because Tom Brady, I as good as Patrick Mahomes is, and Patrick Mahomes is very good. Kansas City's defense does not do well with the type of dink and dunk, little 5-10 yard passes that Brady likes to throw. He doesn't launch it down the field very much anymore. So I'm going to take Tampa and see, and hopefully they win. And I got a little bit of money on the game, so hopefully that works out.
I hope it does for you too. What do you think, Fish?
Yeah, I like where Brent's head is at. And the one thing I can't bet against the GOAT, Tom Brady. He's been to the Super Bowl. How many times he's got that, big game ability. And I think, it's just a walk in the park for him. He doesn't feel pressure. He's been there so many times. And I think, again, just for his legacy, the fact that he's no longer in New England and he's the guy in Tampa, and the fact he could win a Super Bowl in another place, I think the game has extra meaning for Tom Brady. And we all know he can perform in the clutch. But Patrick Mahomes is sort of the up and coming, the next big stud quarterback. And we could see a bit of a passing of the torch if Kansas City comes out and Patrick Mahomes outperforms Tom Brady. It could almost be a symbolism or symbolic of passing of the torch from Brady to Patrick Mahomes. But I'm not ready to bet against the GOAT just yet. So I'll go with Brent and hope Brent cashes in tomorrow and also take the Bucks, Tampa Bay over Kansas City.
Well, guys, as worthless as my prediction is, because I'm not a big follower of the NFL, and both of you know that. But all I ever hear, and after Deflategate and everything else, is Tom Brady this, Tom Brady that, and it's all you ever hear is Tom Brady. So I'm going to go with the underdog, and I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win. So you both owe me a shot of vodka if that's how it pans out. How's that?
Game on.
We'll see how that goes. Looking forward. They're going to have some fans in the stadium, about 25,000, I think, which is going to be kind of nice to see, I suppose. So it's good to see we can at least get some fans in at some of these games as best they can, I guess.
Yep.
So
let's put it this way: an empty Super Bowl, that would have been weird. They needed to have at least, I think, 25,000. That's about what Tampa had been having at their home games. So it's like you said, it's good that they've got people there because it's the Super Bowl, and if they didn't, it would just be kind of strange.
Well, and I think what's cool is they're actually offering, I think, tickets for a lot of frontline healthcare workers. So I think that's a really, really nice thing to see. So all in all, it's going to be a good time. Good halftime show. The Canadian performer in there as well with the weekend. So we'll see how that goes. As far as important dates, we always wrap up with this on the podcast and the UFFS. Fish, you and I saw a demo of the website landing page the other night, and I am so excited with this thing. It looks so good, Fish, and so we're working on that, and that should be coming up soon, I guess. That's one thing we should remind people of.
Yeah, definitely. Cyan and the Zilliqa team have worked wonders on the platform, and we're nearing that launch date for sure. We're hoping to have a public rollout within the next month or so here, so to attract a lot more new people as far as scouts and perhaps some more of the crypto world infiltrate there a bit and get some more potential new franchise owners and bids on franchises and stuff once the platform launches. But everything's looking world class and first class. And like I said, the Zilliqa team's been hard at work behind the scenes, and it was great to get that first glimpse of what we're going to be working with and what all the users that are already in the UFFS community have to look forward to here in the months to come.
You bet. And the other important item, Brent, you have about 26 days or so to find your famous family Baldwin members and get some cash to bid on our expansion franchise. That's coming up too. March 1st is the deadline. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I think I'll let somebody else have fun with that. I've got enough on my hands working with Arnie and trying to get all this going. So I think somebody else can have fun with the expansion franchise.
It's going to be a lot of fun coming up to the wire. Absolutely, Fish. I think you've got some ideas in the works on pumping up some interest there, and it's going to come down to the wire is what it's going to come down to. A couple bids right now, but it's been up for auction for quite some time, but it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, I think there's at least a handful of groups, handful of people, groups that are watching the bidding and are ready to go for that March 1st the big push on the morning of March 1st. The auction ends at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on March 1st. So 3 weeks exactly from tomorrow, Sunday, February 7th. So it's coming right around the corner. Like I said, we're going to try and do a UFHL mock expansion draft. Everybody's had fun with the Seattle simulator there on Cap Friendly. We're going to kind of create our own little simulation of what a UFHL expansion franchise could look like as kind of a promotional tool for the expansion franchise auction on March 1st as well. And I think that'll be a good learning experience for all the current franchise owners and GMs in the UFHL too, to see somebody else's perspective of what their roster looks like, who they should be protecting, who they might have to expose, who they could lose. I think it'll be a great tool to attract new bidders for the expansion franchise, as well as enlighten some of the UFHL franchises as to their current situation leading up to the expansion draft, which will take place on July 21st. So there'll be lots of gameplay, lots of wheeling and dealing between March 1st and July 21st for the expansion franchise owner. They'll be able to sign some prospects and kind of do some trade negotiations and stuff leading up to that expansion draft. But certainly March 1st is a big date and an exciting date for somebody to land their own UFHL franchise and be able to go through the NHL expansion process every step of the way with Seattle. It'll be for myself personally, I'd love that opportunity. And I think that'll be a great experience for whichever group or individual steps up and lands that highest bid on March 1st.
There's always something going on in the UFFF space, that is for sure. And expansions don't come around all that often. So this is going to be pretty neat to see. I want to thank Brent for joining us. I think we've made history today on the UFFS podcast, our first person in a commissioner type of, role, and our first general manager or assistant general manager that we've had in that capacity on the show as well. So thanks for joining us, Brent.
No problem. It was a lot of fun, guys.
Well, that'll be a wrap on the UFFS podcast number 16, where you own the game. And just like Brent, you want to get in the game.